Hello, America. Welcome to
Angel and the Wiz.
Yes, just while this is in the front, where you're going through the credits and all that stuff. Labeling. I don't want to see stuff I can't read on a box. If you want me to use your product, I want to be able to read what the product says. I want to know how to cook it without needing a magnifying glass, and I want to know how to do anything that's associated. I want instructions printed properly. Let's have a little respect for the people. You make your money from people buying your product. You should make it as easy as possible for people to use your product. Wouldn't you think? Am I asking too much?
So I agree with you.
Let me see where we're at. Wow, we're in a minute. Okay, here we go.
You feel better now?
A little.
Okay.
Okay, this week's word of the week, we kind of hinted at it last week, is teacher.
Teacher, that's me.
Okay, that's her. She is a real teacher. So we're going to have we have an authority here.
Yes.
And let me point out in the beginning, being a teacher is not being a parent. Okay? Teaching is one thing, parenting is another. And she's still going to be our authority. We'll get our real insight from her. But I just want to say that teachers come in all forms. We have formal teachers like Angel here, and then we have friends, and we have relatives. We have people that you come in contact with in business. So there are a wide assortment of teachers and people that need to be paid attention to because they're trying to impart wisdom to you. In most cases, tell me if I'm wrong, teachers improve your life, your ability to live life, your ability to deal with life. Now, not on the emotional side that the parents do, but on the educational side. I mean, so, so where do you want to start? Well, you're a teacher. Talk to me about teaching and the importance of it.
It's become harder.
Okay, why? Political correctness?
There's that. There's, there's the violence.
Okay.
There is the safety, safety and security of students has really become a concern.
Right.
Because of the crazies out there.
And isn't that a reflection of poor parenting?
That's a reflection of poor parenting.
Okay.
The regulations that are being brought down that started with the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001 has caused insane amount of pressure on teachers to get students to pass tests.
Okay.
The lack of parenting, students aren't coming with the correct social skills or with the correct and then some of it even goes beyond previous teachers who aren't fit for that role.
Okay.
Where, like as a math teacher, what I learned is a lot of elementary school teachers, or in my experience, elementary school teachers are very fearful of math.
Okay.
Especially in like the 4th and 5th grades when students are learning about, for some reason, fractions. Elementary school teachers have just this issue with fractions.
Okay.
And I don't know.
Did they have a problem with teaching them?
I think fractions is a confusing topic. I'm not going to lie. It's confusing when you're first learning it.
Right.
And it causes anxiety in the teachers when they have to teach it, so they don't teach it as well as they could or should. Okay,
and fractions are 1/2, 1/3, 1/4. Those are the big ones.
But it's about 4th or 5th grade when you start adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing fractions, and then we have decimals thrown in there, and there's just some chaos, in math. And then the students come to, high school, and they can't first of all, they can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide single-digit numbers in their head. They need a calculator, and then when it comes to fractions, they completely shut down, and it's because they weren't. There's some sort of anxiety with the teachers that is imparted onto the students in the elementary school with math that carries with the students, and then the parents don't always help that situation because I can't tell how many parents say I was never good at math. Or when I would teach geometry, I would have students come in and say, I hate geometry. And I would say, this is the first day of school. You don't know yet if you hate this course or not.
Right.
And
they're afraid of it.
Yeah, and the students would say, well, my parents hated geometry. They said it was too hard and they failed it. So I'm not. So they've already got the
my problem was algebra. I can understand it much better now than I could then.
Right, but they've already got this preconceived notion that they're going to fail because the parents have already given them that anxiety about the topic.
Right.
Anyway, so
parenting.
So the big problem is that students aren't prepared aren't really prepared for the high school stuff, and then we've got when they go into college,
Mm-hmm.
there is studies have shown too that there's a large number of colleges that have to offer more and more remedial classes
Okay.
because students
Haven't
learned
what they needed to learn to function well in college.
at college. Yeah. So, but the big problem is that the parents at some point stop parenting somewhere in middle school.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that like they're teenagers? Kids have become teenagers?
Right when puberty hits.
And the parents run.
Yeah. And there's a problem. And so you end up taking on the role of
And the blame of.
Yeah.
Which is something else
I
that bothers
can't tell you how many times I would have to, my parents always taught me you have to take responsibility for your actions.
Right.
And
that's not the teacher's job.
So I would get students that why didn't you do your homework? And and they would come up with excuses or fights. People starting fights in high school just over stupid things and
Right.
arguments and I had a girl, I couldn't pronounce her name correctly because it was an ethnic name, and
Right.
I'm really a white person who
Right.
grew up in the Midwest.
Right.
I could barely handle pepper on my steaks without thinking it was too hot, and then
Right.
I've got these ethnic names I'm supposed to pronounce, and
Right.
she gave me this attitude and the finger and the hip and head and I'm like, where did you learn to talk to someone
right.
of authority on the first day of school like that?
Right, right.
It's things like that. There's like it's awful.
And
it's so hard to be a teacher now.
Well, and that brings me back to that piece in the Zimmerman trial, where this witness was, I don't want to say she was incompetent or ignorant or anything like that, but clearly she didn't have good parenting. Because if she had good parenting, she would not have had the attitude that she brought in. And everybody's walking around saying, "Oh, she did a great job," and she did this and that. She wasn't articulate. She wasn't polite. She didn't understand where she was. She's in court.
Right.
You're expected to act a certain way, and that is not a teacher's role. A teacher's role is not. Listen, there's no truth to the fact that teachers give homework as punishment. Right?
No, I never gave it as punishment.
The reason
was just this is the responsibility. You
can only do so much in class, right?
I've taught you this.
Right.
We've went over it in class, but you have to practice the skill. So,
right.
and that's from the math perspective. That's what it was. I can't speak for any of the other subjects. I don't know. Why they would. But for me, it was we can't spend 3 days waiting for you to practice the skill.
Right.
Because I have a deadline of things I have to get to because you have to pass a federally mandated standardized test because of the No Child Left Behind Act.
Right.
And there's topics that I have to cover.
Right.
So let's, here's how you do this. We've done practice problems. We've done some classwork, but I now need you to take the initiative to do this at home. And then I can't tell you how many times kids would complain because I gave them homework.
Oh, and they couldn't go play video games, and it's
like
sad.
I said last week, my child. Why you? And then they come in. Why are you failing my child?
No, your child is failing.
Your child hasn't turned in the 17 assignments I've assigned this quarter. What do you want me to do? I'm not gonna.
And again, I don't want to blur the vision between parents and teachers, but it's not the teacher's job to be the parent.
It's not.
It's the parent's job to be the parent. And sometimes what that means, and I didn't talk about this last week, is that means that you may, and I suggest those of you who are smart enough do this as early as possible, start letting those kids know as early as possible that they have a responsibility to learn. Okay?
Yes.
That's part of the deal. And if they don't do that, Bill Cosby talked about this, how so many people in the black community are not being properly parented, and they're not going to get the advantages of that, because if you have a good teacher, you can learn a lot. It can change the rest of your life. This little, too often kids who we have them in school as children, really. They start as really children. They in high school, what do they get to, 17 or 18? They don't even believe they're kids anymore. They think they're adults. They're grown up now. I've been around for 17 years. I know everything. I've seen everything else. Okay, so it's hard to even convince them that they still have their life in front of them. They don't understand that the better prepared they are for that life, the better that life is going to be. And that's their responsibility. I mean, it's parents' responsibility too, but it's the child's responsibility. You have to take responsibility for yourself. The teacher's job is to give you information. Your job is to learn it. Their job is to, and I guess your job would be to answer questions and to help them learn it, but to provide them with new information so they can develop new skills that they can use in the real world.
And it's, I think a thing that we've missed both last week and I'm going to bring up now is the influence of the entertainment industry and media on on parenting and teaching.
That's right.
Because
they don't celebrate either.
I should say this. Disney, the Disney channels, do a good job of celebrating families.
Okay.
And as cheesy as those shows are, they are. So a lot of them are family oriented. They have different types of family scenarios that go on, and so I really applaud that because you don't get to see that very often. But then when you look on some of these other TV shows or the musicians, if you look at the way that the musicians behave or your athletes behave, I mean, they had another NFL star was arrested for murder charges or something like that. These are idols and icons that these kids look up to and then emulate in their real life.
That's right.
And and that's what they're.
My kids growing up.
I can't tell you that how many times kids say that I'm gonna be a famous rapper when I grow up, and I was like, well, since you can't spell your name correctly, why don't we focus on a backup skill? Because right now I can't imagine rap is gonna do much for you.
Right. That's funny, and just talking this as a sidelight. When I was growing up, I was a drummer, and I guess I'm proud of this, but the point that I want to make is I was a drummer, and I thought for a while I was going to be a drummer. And then I started thinking about what opportunities are there really to be a drummer. If you're not in a band, what are you going to do? You're going to get a job on the Tonight Show playing drums? You know how many people get to that job? 5 out of 100 million? You know what I mean? It's very limited opportunities. And, that's why teachers are so important. That's why learning is so important. Because what you want to do in life is very rarely what you get to do in life.
Right.
Okay? And it's great to have dreams and hopes and aspire. I'm 60-something years old. And I'm 64. Okay? And I'm still trying to have a hit record. And I got great music and everything else. But I had to live all of this time. Now, and if I have a hit now, and I have a couple, we're working on 2 really good songs. But the bottom line is, then all of a sudden it will happen. It happens quickly when it happens. But it took, 45 years to be an overnight success. Okay? Life is what happens while you're waiting for that other thing. And so it's the better, and I would say this to the parents, if there's any parents that watch, the better you can get your kids to pay attention in school, the more respect you show for the teachers, the more credit you give those teachers, and teach them when the media is sending them puffs of air, the better they will respond to those teachers, and the better they will learn, and the better their life will be. I mean, you just let me see how we're doing. Okay, we're doing really fine. So what's something good and bad about teaching? Good teaching, bad teaching.
Good teaching is you are making a difference in every child's life.
Okay.
You are impacting that child. I feel that when I was in the physical classroom, being in the online classroom, the impact is not as great, but in the physical classroom, for the 55 minutes a day that I had those children, I was making a difference in their life. I was projecting a positive person, role model. Right. And that I was touching them. The bad is you have to deal with
things totally unrelated to teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from you have 25 to 35 kids in a classroom, you have state mandated tests, you have your certification that's always on the line because you're a public servant, you have a variety of other complications of students who don't speak English, to behavior problems, to students with learning disabilities that you have to address, parents coming in, it's just the political side of teaching is a pain in the butt, which makes it so much harder because teachers almost feel like, I can't tell you with every president, every governor, every whoever, it doesn't matter, even though they think they're making the right choices for education, and some are better than others.
Right.
Like, the No Child Left Behind Act, great idea.
Right.
Horrible implementation.
Bingo. How often do we see that?
The Race to the Top.
Right.
Not great.
Okay.
But better than No Child Left Behind.
Okay.
So, as much as people complain about Race to the Top, we have to celebrate the small successes that are happening. So we're getting rid of some of the horrible parts of No Child Left Behind. Right. With Race to the Top. So I can't complain too much about that too. So, it's just the political stuff. But with every president and every new governor,
they all have their ideas, right?
Yeah, and there's new mandates that come down, and we've got however many years and months to deal with it, and then somebody else comes in and changes the world around for us.
And that's no good. And you notice that none of them sit down with teachers to find
Very
out
few of them.
what maybe some do.
Race
but
to the Top had when they on some of their committees, because they had a bunch of different committees and doing a bunch of different things, did have some teacher input on there.
Okay.
So
now
I won't deny that.
Because we're talking about teachers. This is really neat, and I want to say that I have a chance to be a teacher this week. At the end of the show, there's going to be a song called Visions of My Life. And what it is it's life asking me questions and me telling life how I and why I respond the way I do. Okay, do you want to start Here, this is this. I got this from Aunt Pat. Thanks, Aunt Pat.
Aunt Pat.
This is the learning spot. What time is it? 16:53? Okay. 16:53. Okay? We have till 23:15. Okay? This is high school, 1957 versus 2013, and it's a little lighthearted.
These are different scenarios
right.
that would happen, and how the reaction would be in 1957, and how the reaction is now in 2013.
How many do we have total?
There's,
I think 18.
Yeah, 8.
8. Okay, so we'll do 4 each. You want to go first? You want me to?
You can go first.
Okay, here we go.
You do the first.
Okay. Okay. Scenario number 1. Jack goes quail hunting before school and then pulls into the school parking lot. Remember, this is high school. Jack goes quail hunting before school and then pulls into the school parking lot with his shotgun in his truck's gun rack. In 1957, the vice principal comes over, looks at Jack's shotgun, goes to his car, and gets his shotgun to show Jack. In 2013, the school goes into lockdown, the FBI is called, Jack is hauled off to jail and never sees his truck or his gun again. Counselors called in for traumatized students and teachers.
I'll tell you that that scenario sometimes happens in schools.
I believe it.
It's more common in some of the rural communities.
Right.
Where, depending on
they're
the
very
school
used
rules,
to it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, here you go. Scenario number 2. Johnny and Mark get into a fist fight after school. And this happens for 100 years. It's always going to happen. Okay, in 1957, a crowd gathers. Mark wins. Johnny and Mark shake hands and end up as buddies. In 2013, police called. A SWAT team arrives. They arrest both Johnny and Mark. They are both charged with assault and both expelled, even though Johnny started it. Okay? Scenario number 3. Jeffrey will not be still in class. He disrupts other students. In 1957, Jeffrey is sent to the principal's office and given a good paddling by the principal. He then returns to class, sits still, and does not disrupt class again. In 2013, Jeffrey is given a huge dose of Ritalin. He becomes a zombie. He is then tested for ADD, attention deficit disorder. The family gets extra money, Social Security income, from the government because Jeffrey has a disability. Wow. Scenario number 4.
Which is sad.
Yes.
Because sometimes you have kids that don't need it.
Right.
And then there are kids that desperately need it, and I feel that those that don't need it are abusing the system.
Right. Okay, scenario number 4. Billy breaks a window in his neighbor's car and his dad gives him a whipping with his belt. In 1957, Billy is more careful next time, grows up normal, goes to college, and becomes a successful businessman. 2013, Billy's dad is arrested for child abuse. Billy is removed to foster care and joins a gang. The state psychologist is told by Billy's sister that she remembers being abused, spanked. herself. And then Dad goes to prison. Billy's mom has an affair with the psychologist.
Scenario number 5. Mark gets a headache and takes some aspirin to school. All right, in 1957, Mark shares his aspirin with the principal out on the smoking dot. I'll actually tell you, it's illegal to smoke in schools.
I can believe it.
In 2013, the police are called and Mark is expelled from school for drug violations. His car is then searched for drugs and weapons. That's actually has happened. I've seen happen before.
And over something that's like aspirin.
Well,
that's what I don't believe. That's too much.
A student had this is a true situation. A student had some a medical issue where he was allowed to take migraine medication in school, and another student had a headache, so he, not knowing the difference, gave this student the migraine medication. Well, it was such a high dose that the student that it was given to became zombie-like and actually like passed out, and they had to call in an ambulance to help the student, and then the police had to be called in because they didn't know how that other student had obtained the, and it
but
was
this is the exception.
So, but it
not
was
the rule,
right? But it was an innocent mistake.
Yes.
That was.
But it got blown out of
proportion. Scenario 7. If we go from 5 to 7, whatever. Johnny takes apart leftover firecrackers from the 4th of July, puts them in a model airplane paint bottle, and blows up a red ant bed. In 1957, the ants die. In 2013, ATF, Homeland Security, and the FBI are called. Johnny is charged with domestic terrorism. The FBI investigates his parents, and all siblings are removed from the home, and all computers are confiscated. Johnny's dad is placed on a terror watch list and is never allowed to fly again. That's a little extreme.
Yeah, but their point is made.
Yeah. Last scenario. Johnny falls while running during recess and scrapes his knee. He is found crying by his teacher, Mary. Mary hugs him to comfort him. In 1957, in a short time, Johnny feels better and goes on playing. In 2013, Mary is accused of being a sexual predator and loses her job. She faces 3 years in a state prison, and Johnny undergoes 5 years of therapy. Students would try and give me a hug, and I literally would stand like this.
Wow.
Isn't
that sad?
Because I didn't want anybody to insinuate that there was, from being a female, that there was a relationship going on with whatever. And
I didn't miss something, did I?
No,
did we have all 8?
We had all 8.
The favors were okay.
So.
Wow. Okay. Well, I hope you had some fun with us this week. We are about to go to Visions of My Life. I hope you enjoy it. I thank you very, very much for being here with us.
Thank you, everybody.
And I thank you for being us. 118 shows. 118 shows. Well over 2 years. She's still here. I'm amazed that she still comes, but I'm glad, huh? She's prettier than me.
Get some of those first shows and see how I've changed.
You should watch some of them.
I should. Bye, America. Do something good every day and volunteer at your local animal shelter.
That's right. Que pasa? I'm learning
Spanish.
Spanish.
Here before, we're going to do some new songs. For those of you who are here for the first time, probably most of them will seem new. Now, I'm a songwriter. I'm not a musician. I have great friends that I know, and they can really play. I just do the best I can, enough to write the song. That's what I try to do. Some of these songs are 30 and 38 years. They're old. And it's like. Life asking me questions. She took me by my hand and said, if the world saw you today, what would your message be? My son, what would you say? Well, I told her I wouldn't change the world, but if they could only be a little bit happy. She took me further down, and she showed me all the times I had shed a tear for those no longer in my life. But I showed her I wouldn't feel so bad for the world shouldn't be any less happy. They should walk upon that silver cloud and see the rainbow spring forth from the ground, and see that love is such a mighty sound. She brought me finally down, but I told her I must go. I'd really like to stay and lay with you, but I feel I'd better go. So I told her, baby, don't feel so bad, I just got to go see that everyone's happy. Oh, yes, you know I've got to go. I've got to go away to live today. You know I've got to go downtown.
And sung by The Wizard.